Hi everyone, it's John from What Up. Welcome back to another video. Now, it's been a little while since I've given you a news video, and you're going to have to wait just a little bit longer because Amazon has been very quiet on the news front. They've basically released no information whatsoever since before production shut down, and they haven't even really officially announced production was shut down yet. We were all expecting something the first Wednesday afterwards, then the second, and we're coming up on the third, and we still haven't heard anything, and I don't really expect anything this Wednesday either. So, there's that. Please prove me wrong, Amazon. I would love it. So in the meantime, I've decided to release a video. This is one I've recorded a while ago, and I wasn't quite sure how it was going to fit in and where I wanted to do it. I was going to do it for a Halloween video, and I kind of scrapped that idea. But this one's about the Forsaken. Now, this Forsaken video is going to detail a little bit of information. So we're going to talk about who the Forsaken are. We'll name them, and we'll talk about them a little bit. When we see them in the books, and when we should expect to see them in the show. I'll talk a little bit about the history of each one of them, so you can get a general idea of how they fit into the story, where they're at, what they do. And then we're going to talk about, are they going to be cut? Are they going to be kept in? Because there are 2,782 named characters in the Wheel of Time, and we all know that they're not all making it. We already know that Rafe is going to amalgamate some of these characters. He's going to cut some of these characters. He kind of has to. You can't cast 2,782 different people to play those many roles. It's just not feasible. Now, again, with this type of production, big bads are generally really big bads, and there's also a ton of smaller big bads in the series. To introduce far too many of them too quickly might, distract the viewer. Now, we all know that a lot of us don't want the book series to be changed when it comes to the screen. However, I'm telling you here, it's going to be changed, and we already know for a fact that some of it has been changed due to some of the leaks we've gotten. So, prepare yourself for some changes, and because of those changes, we're going to talk about the big bads, the series, the chosen themselves. How many of them is Rafe going to keep? How many of them is he going to cut? And how will they fit into the story? And once again, this is all speculation, but because it's just speculation, even a broken clock is right twice a day, so I'm letting you know if I do get some things right in this video, it is completely by accident, and I am sorry if I ruin stuff for you. So there we go. Now, just before we get started, spoiler warning. In this video, I'm going to talk about the Forsaken. Now, these members of the book happen to show up in the very first book, and they're through it all the way to the very end. So if you haven't read the entire Wheel of Time series, and that is the Eye of the World all the way up to and including Book 14, A Memory of Light, be forewarned, I'm going to ruin major plot points. I'm going to ruin parts of the story. I'm going to ruin character development. I'm going to ruin basically everything in the books for you. So be forewarned about that. And if you've already read the series, I hope you enjoyed the video, so let's get on with the video. Alright, so the first Forsaken we're going to talk about is Agonor. Now, we first meet him in Chapter 50 of the Eye of the World, and he gets a full 2 chapters before he's dead and gone. Remember, I did say spoilers. I'm going to ruin everything for you in this video. Just damn. So, if you haven't read the books, it's your last chance to back out before you find out who else dies and when they die. Alright, so yeah, he gets a full 2 chapters, and that's pretty much his whole stint in the books, kind of. I mean, we'll get to that in a second. So who is Agonor? Well, he was one of the Aes Sedai during the Age of Legends whose real only talent was genetic engineering. He got caught manipulating the genes of a bunch of different animals and humans in unethical experiments and was barred from doing it ever again by the Hall of Servants. And then he didn't like that because he wanted to research, so he joined the Shadow. And that's his sole reason for joining the Shadow, is to create monsters. He is credited for creating most of the Shadow spawn in the series. I say most because some of them he didn't do, but most of them he did. Now, I said he died 2 chapters later, and he died because he tried to drain the Eye of the World by himself, hold all of the power because he hadn't held Samayal for so long, and it burned him to ash. One of the more forgettable deaths in the books, if I will say. I don't have many complaints about the books, but the bad guys are one of my complaints because it takes a while for them to pick up and actually become really bad. So, I said he kind of dies. Now, he dies and he's gone away, and that's pretty much it until Lord of Chaos Prologue. He comes back as Ossengar. Now, Ossengar is a reincarnated version of Agonor, and he goes by the name of Corlin de Shiva in the books, and he pretends he's an Ashaman, and he joins Rand's bodyguard, and he helps Rand, actually saves Rand's life quite a few times in different scenarios in the books, and is with him all the way up to and including Chapter 35 of Winter's Heart. That is when he dies, when he's killed by another member of the Black Aja during the battle when the taint is being cleansed from Samayal. Now, again, de Shiva was an amazing character, interesting, very cool. Agonor, not so much, very forgettable. So, are we going to see him in the show, and can he be cut? I think Agonor itself can be completely cut from the show with really no problems. He's kind of a forgettable bad guy. He only shows up for a little bit, and he dies in a very uninspired way. So there's that. Now, when he comes back as Osngar and becomes Corlin de Shiva and helps Rand, that is where he gets very interesting. He becomes a more fleshed out, very cool character, and they could very easily not have him in the first season at all. Like, just cut Agonor out completely, say he didn't make it through the turning of the wheel, and then have him reborn later on as Deshiva, and cast an actor just to do that because he's a more regular figure in the books at that point. That's my thoughts on that anyway. So my verdict, can Agonor be cut? 100%. They can talk about him. They can show that he created the Shadow Spawn if they want. They can do all those things, but he is not an integral or important bad guy or important part of the show until he becomes Deshiva. So it's quite possible that they could just cast Deshiva and not cast Agonor at all. At least that's my thoughts on that. Anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Would you like to see Agonor in the series, or is he forgettable enough to be cut? Anyway, let's get on to the next Forsaken. Alright, up next we have Asmodian. Now, we all know him as the Bard Jason Natal. Now, he shows up first in The Shadow Rising, chapter 36, and then he's killed off rather unceremoniously in The Fires of Heaven, chapter 56. Now, his death's a bit of a controversy in the series and was one of the coolest things that we had to deal with for a little while, but I'll talk about that in just a bit. So who is he? Well, he was a famed composer and musician in the Age of Legends. However, he wasn't quite good enough in his own mind. Now, he was seduced by the fact that he could be immortal and have endless ages of music, and he could also take revenge on all the other musicians and artists who slighted him, and that's why he turned to the shadow. Now, what does he do in the books? Well, he shows up, like I said, in The Shadow Rising, and essentially he is a gleeman or a court bard, I guess, to the Dragon Reborn, Rand al'Thor. That's kind of what happens. They meet in the Waste and whatnot. But Lanfear introduces him as Asmodian to Rand and shields him, and then basically tells Asmodian to teach Rand how to use the One Power so he doesn't go, mad or die or burn himself out too early. And that's basically his whole shtick in the books, is he's there to teach Rand, and he dies a couple of times. First time he's killed by Ravin during the assault on Camelin, and then he comes back after Rand balefires Ravin. But then later on, he dies just rather mysteriously. He opens a door to a cupboard looking for a snack, and he's like, "Oh, wait, you?" And then that was it, and we didn't see him again. It wasn't until much later in the series we find out from Shader Hannon that he was killed by Grendel. So it was a big bone of contention with a lot of the fans at the time. Nobody really knew who killed him. It was who killed Asmodian. There's t-shirts, all kinds of stuff. It was pretty cool. But it was Grendel, and it was just kind of mentioned later on and kind of in passing. So unless you read it and really looked at it, you kind of missed it. So there's that. Now, should he be cut? No, not at all. I think he should stay in the series. In fact, I think they should expand his role a little bit and have him come in just a little bit earlier in The Shadow Rising. Maybe have him show up more towards the end of the Great Hunt and travel to the Waste with Rand. Why do I say that? Well, because it is a great teaching tool for viewers. So he will be able to explain how Saidin works. He'll be able to explain how shielding works. He'll be able to explain a lot of different things that maybe the viewers won't know about the male half, the true source, and its history before, Rand starts actually channeling. And if he gets it a little bit earlier and teaches them for a little bit longer, it'll probably look a little bit better on the screen. That's my take anyway. So I don't think he should be cut. In fact, I think he should be expanded upon. And I 100% think that they shouldn't show who kills him when he dies, and it shouldn't be Grendel. I think they should do something completely different just to throw the fans who've read the series off when they do record his end death and talk about it 3 or 4 seasons later. That's my take on that. Now, when do I think we'll see him? I really hope we'll see him in Season 2, but most likely we're looking at probably Season 3 before we get around to seeing him specifically. All right, let's get on to our next Forsaken. Alright, so up next we have Bathmal. Now, Bathmal first appears in the Eye of the World chapter 50, and he dies in the Eye of the World chapter 50. So we'll talk a little bit about who he is first. So who is he? He was a famed historian during the Age of Legends. However, he was an angry, violent man who liked to gamble and cheat. And he was also a famous womanizer. All things completely frowned upon in the Age of Legends, so he joined the Shadows specifically so he could do those things. And that's pretty much why he joined the Shadow. He was just a terrible person and thought he could become even a more terrible person under the Shadow, which is true. So, how did he die? Well, he confronts Rand and the party at the Eye of the World, and the Green Man doesn't like this. They shouldn't be here. He doesn't think they should be here. He gives him a big hug and uses his powers to make all of the things on Bathmal grow. So all of the spores and rot and mildew and gross things that live in the dark made them grow, and that's what killed Bathmal. And in doing so, he gave his own life to do that. So he pretty much dies confronting the Forsaken at the Eye of the World. But Bathmal comes back, much like Agonor does. I mean, they're both really throwaway bad guys that only show up for a couple of pages, really, in the first book. But Bathmal is reborn as Erengor. Now, Erengor is a much more interesting character because she becomes Egwene's maid in Saladar when Egwene is on her rise to power as the Amyrlin, and can still channel Saladin. So she is a pretty interesting character because she can use the male half the true source, but is female. So it's kind of neat, and she essentially just flees from Saladar after doing all kinds of terrible things and trying to influence Egwene after an Ashman shows up and notices someone is channeling. So she used the one power with impunity as much as she wanted around all these Aes Sedai because they couldn't tell that she was channeling because she was using the male half the true source. A male channeler shows up, which was still fairly rare, and she gets scared and ran away. Now, where did she run to? She ran to Grendel, and that's where she died permanently. So she was with Grendel and Natan's Barrow, and that's when Rand kind of balefired the whole valley and trying to kill Grendel. Didn't even know Erengor was there, and didn't kill Grendel, but killed Erengor with balefire so she or he couldn't be reborn again. Now, should they be cut from the show? Here's the thing. They're a throwaway bad guy, and no one really likes throwaway bad guys, especially for the end of a first season. I think both Agonor and Bathmal should both be cut, but Erengor should be kept. Very interesting character. Kind of neat that it's using the male half the true source, but is a female. Lots of potential for different things they could do that weren't really shown in the books with that. So I think for sure Erengor should stay in, and the whole plot line with Erengor should stay pretty much intact. But Bathmal itself should be cut because, I mean, who wants to see a bad guy for 4 minutes on screen? Because that's essentially what it's going to end up being. All right, let's get on to our next Forsaken. All right, so we have Bellal up next. Now, Bellal is another one of those very short stints in the books. So he first appears in the Dragon Reborn Chapter 4 and dies in the Dragon Reborn Chapter 55. So at least he lasts most of a book. He's not talked about very much, and he's not in center stage very much at all, but he's there for a little bit longer than Agonor and Bathmal were, so that's good. Now, who is he? Well, in the Age of Legends, he was a skilled blade master that was a very good friend of Lews Therin. Now, the two of them together took the tame sport called swords and made it into something they could kill with. But ultimately, his jealousy of the dragon led him to join the Shadows so he could overcome and best his former best friend and, be better than him because, jealousy is a driving factor of a lot of these people. Should he stay or should he go? Well, that all depends on what you think. He has a very short stint in the books. Basically, you really only get to see him in a few scenes, and that's pretty much near the end of the Dragon Reborn when he's fighting Rand. Now, when he fights Rand in the Stone of Tyr, he uses a Heronmark blade made from the one power, so it's a dark flame, and he basically fights him with a sword and doesn't use the one power at all. If very little in that fight, because he's trying to get Rand to draw Kalendor, the sword that is not a sword, which is a powerful Sa'agriel, so he can take it for himself and become nae'blis and basically rule over the Chosen, because he'll be the most powerful Chosen at that point. This early in the series probably would have worked, but Moraine balefired him. So during the fight, Moraine, shows up, balefires him, and that's it. He's out of the reach of the Dark One, can't be reborn because he was balefired, and that's that. So should he be cut? Well, here's the thing. I think that Bellal can 100% be cut from the show completely because he's not shown on screen that much except for pretty much that one big fight scene near the end, and then he's balefired. So another Forsaken that is going to be maybe fleshed out a little bit more and shown in the show a little bit more could take Bellal's spot and do all the things he did and just not get balefired and go away. Because there are quite a few Forsaken that don't show up till later on in the series, and you could introduce them earlier and have them fleshed out and do more things. I wouldn't know who ought to amalgamate together to get to this, so why don't you guys let me know in the comments down below which of the other Forsaken that come in later on would be a good match to amalgamate Bellal into, rather than casting somebody for a couple of scenes, kind of like Agonor and Bathmal. Alright, let's get on to our next Forsaken. All right, up next we have Demandred. Now, Demandred is my favorite Forsaken, so I might spend a little bit more time on him, just a smidge. We first see him in the Lord of Chaos prologue, where we see a lot of the Forsaken for the first time. So that goes to show we don't see a lot of the big bads until, partway through the series, which is, I think they should be introduced earlier and take more of a heavy hand in the show, but we'll see how that goes. And we see him for the last time in A Memory of Light, chapter 37, where he dies during the last battle. Now, who is he? Well, he was basically second to Lews Therin in everything his whole life in the Age of Legends. He would have been the most famous man of the age if it was not for the dragon. He would have basically been the dragon if it was not for the dragon. He would have been, everything. But he was just second best to Lews Therin the whole time, and he was just insanely jealous of the man. So when the Shadow gave him a chance to get back at the man he's super jealous of and get rid of him and become the most famous man of his age, he took it and he joined the Shadow. Now, in the books, he's not shown a whole lot. You don't see him a whole lot. He comes in here and there and he does little talks and he behind the scenes, but he really doesn't take center stage until the final battle. And when he comes in the final battle, it's pretty amazing. So there was a short story written by Brandon Sanderson that covered some of what he did in the interim that wasn't shown in the books. And what he did is he went to Shara, he freed the people in Shara, he united them, he freed them from oppression. He did all kinds of really great things for the Sharans. Grew to love them, and he was their chosen one. He was their prophesized one to lead them to victory and honor during the final battle, during the last battle rather. So all of that is not shown in the book series, and it was hinted at and talked about a little bit in that short story by Brandon Sanderson, and it was just absolutely amazing. I loved the Sharans when I read about them in the Wheel of Time, the World of the Wheel of Time, the big white book, and I wanted to see more of them, and we really never did. I loved the fact that Demandred went there, and I love the fact that he kind of redeemed himself a little bit in loving these people and doing all kinds of good things for them, for a bad end, of course, so he could use them, but I think that the show could handle him in such a way where they could parallel him to Rand and have him rise to power in Shara, which would be absolutely amazing if they did that the whole way through, and basically have him be the anti-Dragon Reborn, which would be blow me away, and then build it all up to a big battle between the two of them. And as you know, he never actually fights Rand during the last battle. First he fights Gawain, and Gawain had the blood knives on, which are those little rings that gave him all kinds of extra powers that didn't help. He still died. And then he fought Glad and took Glad's arm. Glad didn't die, but he took his arm from him. And then he fought Logain, and pretty much bested Logain, almost killed him, but didn't. And then he fought Lan. Now, Lan had the Foxhead Medallion on him, and Lan was an expert swordsman, much like Demandred was, and Lan beat him and killed him by sheathing the sword, which I can't wait to see on screen. I think it would be absolutely amazing to have him build up a character like an anti-hero with a separate people on a separate continent. I think that would be absolutely phenomenal to see in the show. It would be really cool. Now, it would be a massive change from the books. Kind of. I mean, a little bit, because you're showing stuff that wasn't shown in the books. You're not really changing it. You're adding it to it. And we know that Rafe is adding a lot to the books. So I would really like to see Demandred fleshed out and see all of his big storylines happen on screen. I think that would be amazing. So that comes to the question, should he be cut? Yeah, absolutely not. I think they should expand the crap out of Demandred. Just make him the full anti-Dragon Reborn, and parallel his rise to power with Rand's. I think it would make for amazing TV. So, Rafe, if you're listening, I work for free. I'll help. All right, let's get on to the next Forsaken. All right, up next we have Grendel. Now, Grendel we first see in the Fires of Heaven prologue, and we last see her in Towers of Midnight epilogue, and she dies there. However, there's another however, she's one of those Forsaken that dies and comes back again, kind of like some of the other ones. You notice a recurring pattern here. If they're not Balefired, they come back. Yeah, that's what the Dark One does. So, during the Age of Legends, she was the most renowned psychologist ever. For 400 years, she practiced psychology, and she basically could cure any malady of the mind, either with one power or without. She was absolutely famous for it. She also lived a very chaste and moral life. So she was so moral, in fact, that no one in the world could live up to her standards. Nobody was quite as good as her. Nobody was good enough for her, and it was frustrating, and it made her angry because, I mean, she was the most perfect moral being in the Age of Legends in her mind. So when the chance to join the Shadow came along, she basically said, yeah, nobody can live up to my standards anyway, so why bother? And she flipped everything 180 and changed the way she dressed, changed the way she viewed the world, and basically just lived for her own pleasure and nothing else, which was the exact opposite of what she was before. Now, during the book series, we see her quite often here and there behind the scenes, a lot of plots and stuff like that. She almost gets killed in Nathan's barrel by Rand when he balefires the whole valley. However, she escapes the last second, basically sacrificing another one of the Forsaken in her stead. And then she starts to help Slayer try to kill Perrin at one point during the series. Now, she fails miserably because we know that Perrin is pretty awesome. And because she fails, Shader Heron basically kills her. He just says, you failed, he kills her, and that's that. And we're like, oh, she's gone forever. However, she is reborn by the Dark One as Heslam. Now, Heslam is basically the most ugly and disfigured person ever. And that's how she's described in the books. And Heslam was there basically trying to compel Avienda when Avienda was picking apart her gateway weave after they get the Bowl of Winds. And when that happened, she couldn't hold the weave. The weave collapsed. Pieces of that weave hit the compulsion that Heslam was using on Avienda and caused her to just be completely in love with Avienda and be compelled to save her and do everything she could for her. She scoops Avienda up, carries her back into camp to be healed, and then disappears. We really don't see Heslam after that at all. So it's one of those things where Grendel is could be an amazing character, but she wasn't used to her full potential in the book series, I don't believe. Should she be cut? No, I don't think she should. I think she should be completely fleshed out. Now, this gives a chance for Raid from the Crew to go full-on Game of Thrones hard R rating with a lot of stuff that would draw a lot of viewers in. Grendel, I think, will become a fan-favorite bad guy and probably will get more screen time than, she normally would, or any other Forsaken would, because of the way she is portrayed in the books and the way they can portray her on the screen. So I think we're going to see a lot more Grendel on screen, fleshed out a lot more than in the book series. That's just my take on it, because it would make for good TV for people to watch and draw new people into the show. I mean, sex sells. It's just the way it is. All right, let's get on to our next Forsaken. All right, so up next we have Samayal. Now, Samayal is first seen in the Dragon Reborn prologue, and we last see him in the Dragon Reborn chapter 56, where he dies. Kind of. He's one of the other Forsaken that comes and goes. So, during the Age of Legends, he was one of the foremost philosophers of his age, and he was very, very smart. When they drilled the bore into the Dark One's prison, he figured out that the Force of the Light and the Dark One had been doing this battle and fighting this dance for ever, for time immemorial, because it happened for infinite time, and it will only end when the Dark One wins, and he breaks the Great Serpent, and there's no more time, and there is nothing else. So, essentially, as a philosopher, he's saying that it's inevitable, it's going to happen, you're only prolonging what's going to happen. Prolonging the inevitable, why bother fight it? He embraced it, he joined the Shadow, because that's essentially, he just wants everything to end. Now, he has these big flaming eyes in the books because he uses the true power almost exclusively in the books. They don't describe it, they don't mention it, but if you go through what the true power does to you, if you use it enough, you get something called saw in your eyes, which are black flecks, and eventually that turns into flames. Your eyes turn into caverns of flames. It's near the end when you become too addicted to the true power, and eventually you're going to burn yourself out. And that's where he was at in the books. And he was also just a little bit mad. He kind of thought he was the Dark One for quite some time and acted that way in the book series. Now, when he died because he was fighting Rand, basically, at the end of the Dragon Reborn, and Rand killed him. Now, when Rand killed him, he was reborn again as a character named Moradin. Now, Moradin, again, almost exclusively used the true power. All the thoughts and feelings of Samayal, a little less crazy, maybe, but other than that, he was essentially the same thing. He was working for the Force of the Dark just to make everything end. And because of that reason, he wasn't doing it for power, he wasn't doing it for jealousy or anger, or any other reason at all. He was only focused on the goal of having the Dark One win. He was chosen as nae'blis, and that's where he was. Now, he dies at the very end of the book series during the last battle in the Memory of Light, when Rand is fighting the Dark One, and Rand dies, but is able to transfer his consciousness and spirit into Moradin's body, effectively allowing Moradin to go into nothingness, which was what he wanted, and Rand lived through the last battle in a different body. I had to, read it a few times when I first read it the very first time to get what happened, but that's essentially the Cole's Notes, the very abridged version of what happened. Now, should he stay in? 100% he should. He is an amazing character. You only get to see a Samayal, for a few chapters in The Dragon Reborn as main characters, but he also thinks he's the Dark One. So who is the Dark One in the first few books is a Samayal. So this actor, whoever is going to play him, will have, a lot of screen time, at least for the first few seasons, and then later on when he comes back as Moradin, another actor can take over. Now, there was one portrayal of a Samayal, and that was by Billy Zane, and to be fair, Billy did a good job in parts of Winter Dragon as a Samayal. In fact, he was the only thing that was really any good about that at all, in my opinion. And there's been rumors flying around that he's an option to come back and play the character again, and there was an actual petition or hashtag for a while by the Black Tower podcast to bring back Billy as a Samayal. So I don't know if that's going to happen. None of these Forsaken have been cast yet. We don't know for sure. But it would be kind of a nod to Winter Dragon to bring Billy back as a Samayal, because he's only going to be there for a few seasons, and then you have Moradin afterwards. So there's that. Should he be cut? No, not at all. In fact, I think they should expand his role a little bit and maybe show his rise to power so that you can show the cyclical version of time and see what's happening there a little bit earlier and kind of explain it so it's not just a big bomb dropped on everybody in the last 20 minutes of the finale episode. So there's that. All right, let's get on to our next Forsaken. All right, up next we have Lanfear. Now, Lanfear first shows up in The Great Hunt, Chapter 16, and we last see Lanfear in The Fires of Heaven, Chapter 52, where she is killed, but then she comes back later on. So we're going to talk about that in a minute. So who is she at first? Well, she was a researcher in the Age of Legends. Now, she loved power more than anything else, and she was a very jealous woman. She did date the dragon Lucerne for a while, but he left her because he couldn't handle her jealous rages and her love of power, and eventually settled with his wife, Ileana. Now, that kind of, messed her up just a bit. So when she bored into the Dark One's prison, trying to find a new source of power that both men and women could use, she saw the potential of that. She saw the potential to basically take what she wanted, and she was the very first person to turn to the Dark One, the very first Forsaken. And she did that in the Hall of Servants in front of everyone, which was, I hope they show that in the show, really, because that would be very, very cool to see. Now, after she did that, she basically spends most of the books courting Rand, either trying to, force him to love her or helping him in different ways. She gets a teacher for him, Asmodian, but then she kind of flies into a jealous rage when she finds out that Rand has been with another woman, and she attacks everyone in the Waste, and as she's killing people and trying to kill Aviendha, who, Rand was with, and that's what she was jealous about. Moraine comes and basically throws herself at Lanfear, and they both go through the twisted stone doorframe into the realm of the Elfin and the Elfin, and we don't see her again. Later on, she is killed by Moradin. Now, Moradin enters that realm, kills her because they are draining her powers and draining her ability to channel, so she can be reborn by the Dark One. She's reborn as Sindain. Now, when Sindain comes back, essentially she is completely under the control, using a device that uses her blood to, they can kill her at any moment by just touching it, and she is used as a tool at that point. She's no longer after Lucerne. She's no longer really on a quest of her own. She went from the first Forsaken to basically the most reviled. And she's eventually killed by Perrin in the World of Dreams, which, she meets her end, and it's not even by Rand's hand, which is, her former lover, and that's all she wanted the whole book series. So there's that. Do I think she should be cut? In no way, shape, or form do I think she should be cut. I think she should be expanded upon. She's one of the Forsaken that would do really well as a big bad starting in the first season, shadowing the Emmonsfielders, basically helping Rand out here and there. We meet her earlier than we do in the books. It gives an actress time to basically sign on for multiple seasons for a role without any big breaks in between, and it can flesh out her character a lot, especially if we see some of her backstory, which I think would be really cool to see as the very first Forsaken. All right, so let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Lanfear, expand her a bit, see her a little bit more. I think it would be kind of cool. Anyway, let's get on to the next Forsaken. All right, up next we have Masana. Now, Masana is a very interesting character, and I hope they do more with her than they did in the books. So, Masana, we first see her in The Shadow Rising, chapter 47, and we see her for the last time in Towers of Midnight, chapter 38. She was a teacher in the Age of Legends, and she was a very, very good teacher. However, she wanted to be a researcher, and she was turned down for the position. And because of that, she got very upset, and she turned to the Shadow so she could pursue research. Now, she did all kinds of really terrible things for the Shadow in the Age of Legends, but after she was freed from the Dark One's prison in present day, she infiltrated the White Tower and was basically the Shadow Amerlin behind the scenes. She orchestrated Rand's capture. She orchestrated a bunch of different things from the White Tower. The White Tower split was essentially mostly her. She did all kinds of things. In fact, from behind the scenes, she did more to further the Shadow's game, at least in weakening the White Tower, than any other Forsaken, in my opinion. She was really, really cool. She was basically masquerading as Danielle, a brown Aja Aes Sedai, and no one really knew that until much later on in the series. Now, how did she die? Well, she died because at one point during the series, she attacked Egwene when Egwene was meeting with the Windfinders and the Aiel in the World of Dreams, and Egwene was that much more stronger than her in the World of Dreams. She fractured her mind, and when she fractured her mind, they found her body, and she was just a lifeless, drooling nothing. She had no mind left at all. Now, when that happened, that was pretty much it. We don't really know what happens to her after that. There's not much mention of what they do to her after that. She just doesn't have a mind anymore. So she's still Masana, she's just not there. So, do I think they should cut her from the series? In no way, shape, or form do I think they should. In fact, I think that she should be one of those characters that is greatly expanded. And if they greatly expand her, they could see her pulling the strings behind the scenes, the whole series, starting right from the get-go. Have her shown infiltrating the White Tower. In fact, I would love to see her in the first season, in the first few episodes, take over as one of the minor characters, and that minor character eventually go to the tower and become the Shadow Amerlin. I think that would be absolutely amazing. That's one of the theories I actually had about one of the castings, but that's for another video. All right, what do you guys think? Should she be cut? Should she stay? Is she a good character? I liked her. Although in the books it was all behind the scenes. She basically pulled all of the strings, and it would be really cool to see that part of it on the show. All right, let's get on to the next Forsaken. All right, up next we have Mchitty, and now she is known as the Spider. We first see her in The Shadow Rising, chapter 46, and we see her at the very end of the series, A Memory of Light epilogue. So she lasts the whole series. Yay! But her fate is kind of worse than death in the end of it, almost. We'll get to that in a minute. So she was an investment banker in the Age of Legends, and she joined the Shadow long before she did publicly and acted as a spy, and she detailed many major setbacks for the forces of the light while she was working for the Shadow. Eventually she was found out, publicly joined the Shadow, and in the series, she did much the same thing. She was very good at spying, very good at sabotage, very good at using the Mask of Mirrors to change her identity to different things and work behind the scenes. She was eventually captured by Nynaeve and Elaine, and they kept her in Saladar under lock and key using a dam. Now, when they did that, they wrenched a bunch of stuff out of her. She was managed to hold back a lot, but she did give them some very marvelous discoveries. She was freed by Arengar, but then she was basically taken to Sheol and trapped inside a mind trap, so at that point, she was just like Sindane or Lanfear, one of the most reviled Forsaken, and used as a tool. Now, during the last battle, she didn't die, but when Demandred fell, she used the Master Mirrors to become Demandred and take command of the Sharans. But she wasn't a very good battlefield commander, and Talamanes came along with his dragons and decimated the Sharans. And then she was eventually captured by the Shanchan, and she ends the series as a dam. So, not a great look for her. She ends up going back to Ebudar with the rest of the captured dam. We don't know what happens to her after that, but I'd like to think she got what she deserves. So, should she be cut from the series? I don't think so. She does a lot of things behind the scenes, and she's very good at it, although it's quite possible that they should expand her role a little bit, much like Masana. So Masana had a behind-the-scenes role as well, and having two of them, which are kind of behind the scenes, might make it a little more difficult for the viewers to discern between the two of them. So maybe, and it's quite possible, either expand Mchitty's role or amalgamate the two in some way, shape, or form, so they can do some of each of the storyline, and it kind of whittles down the Forsaken a little bit because there's so many of them, and they show up so sporadically and then die and then get reborn. It could be confusing for a viewer who hasn't read the book series. But that's my thoughts. Maybe don't use Mchitty as Mchitty, maybe use Masana as both. That's what I would like to do with her specifically. That way, you kind of killed two birds with a stone, and they have very similar personalities and very similar ways of operating, which would kind of work out. So let me know what you think down below. Should the two of them be amalgamated, or should she be her own character and maybe expanded just a bit? All right, let's get on to the next Forsaken. All right, up next we have Ravin. Now, Ravin we first see in the Dragon Reborn Chapter 4, and we last see him in the Fires of Heaven Chapter 55. Not much is known about him during the War of Power or during the Age of Legends, other than he liked power, and that was pretty much it. He joined to gain more power. That's why he joined the Shadow. In modern day, he attached himself to the Queen of Andor Morgase in Caemlyn and used compulsion to make her do what he wanted to make his position of power greater to go against the Dragon Reborn. Rand eventually comes to Caemlyn and Bale fires him, and that's pretty much it. Now, do I think he should be cut from the books? No. Do I think he should be amalgamated with another character? 100%. His plotline is just not deep enough for a full character, and he's kind of a throwaway. He's the big bad of the Fires of Heaven near the end of it, but I think he could be amalgamated with another Forsaken that kind of escapes when Rand fights and goes somewhere else. And who's that Forsaken could be? Well, he's the next guy we're going to talk about. All right, and that person is Samayal. Now, we first see him in the Fires of Heaven prologue, and we last see him in A Crown of Swords chapter 41. So, who is he? He is, basically, he was a very good general, a very good tactician, and he was friends with the dragon during the Age of Legends, and he was an amazing general for the Forces of Light who tended to want to be on the defensive all the time, which was great because the Forces of Light were constantly on the defense. Now, when supreme command of the Forces of Light were given to the dragon rather than him, he was mad because he thought he was a superior general, so he joined the Shadow. Again, a jealousy thing. A lot of these things are power or jealousy is why they joined the Shadow. When that happened, he eventually betrayed the light and was given the name Samayal. Now, what did he do in the books? Well, he basically crowned himself Lord Brend. He took over Ilyn. Now, that would be a very good idea to amalgamate him with Ravin because they did similar things. They were very similar in the way they were portrayed in the books in different ways. Ravin could escape from Caemlyn and become Samayal and Ilyn. Maybe the same name, maybe just Samayal for both or Ravin for both, but I think it would be a very good idea to amalgamate the two characters together and not have Ravin die so quickly in the books. Mainly because there's so many Forsaken, and people are going to start to get confused as the seasons go on, unless they're killed off really quickly, or they're amalgamated together and pared down from 13 to maybe 6 or 7. Because that's a lot of bad guys. So that's my thoughts. I think Samayal should be amalgamated with Ravin, and the two of them should be basically one character in the show. All right, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Give me your thoughts. Should they be amalgamated? Am I crazy? Should they be two completely different characters? Should they be completely expanded? I don't know. All right, let's get on to the next Forsaken. All right, and last but not least, we have Semiraj. Now, Semiraj is first seen in the Lord of Chaos prologue, like a lot of the other Forsaken, and we last see her in the Gathering Storm chapter 22. She was a very gifted medical professional during the War of Power, but she also liked to inflict pain. In fact, she really loved inflicting pain, and she also liked to decide who lived and died, and if she thought they didn't deserve to live, she'd just kill them. So when she was caught, she was given a choice to be bound as a criminal, and she decided not to take that choice, and she joined the Shadow instead so she could, take her pleasures out on other people with impunity. So she's kind of a sadistic person. In the book series, she comes across the Aerith Ocean with the Shan-Chan as Tuon's truth speaker. Now, when this happens, eventually, throughout the whole book, she's with the Shan-Chan for a lot of the time, and she gets a Dominion Band and eventually uses it on Rand. Now, the Dominion Band is like a male Adam. Wouldn't have controlled him forever, but she could control what he did, his mind, his body, everything, and she had him try to kill Min, one of his lovers. Now, when that happened, Rand opened himself up through Mord into the True Power, used the True Power to kill her, and that's how she dies in the series. Should she be cut? I don't think so. I really like her character, but I think she should be expanded quite a bit. I think she should take center stage with the Shan-Chan, and she should be one of the High Lords or High Ladies rather than just a truth speaker. I think she should actually command parts of the Shan-Chan army that come over. I think that would make her a lot more, I guess is the best way to put it. It would give us more of her time on screen and flesh out her character a lot more, having her command the Shan-Chan rather than just be kind of behind the scenes, because we have a lot of people, a lot of the Forsaken that like to be behind the scenes and do things behind the scenes. I think seeing her, especially start of season 2, showing up would be absolutely amazing. I think that would be really cool. All right, so that's all of Forsaken. I went through each and every one of them. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. I know it was a long video. Thank you so much for sticking with me here to the very end. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please do so. I usually put out 1 to 2 videos a week. It's been a little bit longer than that right now, but we're getting back into a couple of videos a week now. So let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Tell me which Forsaken you want to cut, which ones you want to amalgamate, which ones you want to keep, and which ones you want to flesh out their stories. Demandred, basically, flesh out Demandred a lot. He's really cool. All right. Thank you so much for sticking with me here to the very end, and here's to many more.